Hello and welcome back to the next instalment in the Learn Tarot with Me series. So today we're carrying on with our deeper dive into each card of the Major Arcana, and today's card is the High Priestess. So let me give you a good look at that. So the High Priestess is the number 2 card in tarot, okay? And the number 2 is very significant because it's representing duality. So we can also see that duality represented here by this pillar, the B and the J, right? By this black pillar and this white pillar, yeah? So this is about the shadow side and our lighter side, right? None being better than the other, right? No judgment about either side. But it's that duality that we hold inside of us, okay? That shadow side is further kind of emphasized by the fact that the High Priestess is basically the story of Persephone. So Persephone is a Greek mythology story, if you want to look it up. And it's basically about Persephone going into the underworld, going into Hades, going into hell, and then coming back out, going in, coming back out, right? So it's that cyclical nature of going within ourselves, coming back out, going within, coming back out. I think it may also be linked to the seasons, like winter and summer. So yeah, check that out if you want to know a little bit more about the mythological roots of this card. So tarot can get incredibly deep, okay? There are lots of mythological, lots of spiritual and lots of religious imagery in the tarot. So there's a lot of imagery from the Kabbalah, there's a lot of imagery from the Bible, and that's what actually the B and the J represent. They're actually representative of biblical scripture. So I'm not going to go into that because if I go into that, it can get a little bit overwhelming. We're trying to keep things medium deep in these readings rather than incredibly deep. But I may in the future go and look at the more mythical, religious, spiritual symbology behind these cards. But for now, just know that the High Priestess is kind of a card that brings together lots of different really ancient kind of spiritual ideals and principles. And if we're going to just talk about one of these ideals and principles, if we're just going to try and put all what she brings into kind of one word, then that is intuition. It's that going within and connection to ourselves, right? It's that passivity that comes with thinking, feeling before action. And that's basically what the High Priestess is. The High Priestess goes within before she acts. She also goes in to gather wisdom, and she also gathers wisdom from the really difficult time in her life, from the really hard times in her life, right? Think about going into Hades, going into hell, okay? She garners wisdom and strength from really difficult things. And she garners wisdom and strength from the difficult parts of her own nature. So that shadow side of ourselves is a very important part of ourselves, something that we often try and gloss over or pretend isn't there, right? We all have a shadow side. We all have a side to us that we may not necessarily want to look at because it doesn't hold, the best aspects of our personality, or because it's where trauma lives, where it's where difficult things in our lives have been shoved away to, right? So the shadow side is an important aspect of ourselves, and the High Priestess encapsulates that. She also encapsulates that divine feminine energy. So the divine feminine is traditionally characterized by the new moon, and we can see the new moon here. So women, we know, are very much governed by the moon in terms of our natural menstrual cycles, right? And the new moon is the time in which many women find themselves to actually be on a period, to actually be bleeding. And so that dark side of the moon is also in lots of ways the most fruitful side of the moon, right? If you're staying with me, if you get me. And that's what the High Priestess is talking about. The High Priestess embodies that deep feminine wisdom that is found in the dark, right? So I'm going to be talking a lot about masculine and feminine energies as we continue this journey. And I just want to make clear that I'm not talking about gender. I'm literally talking about the masculine and feminine energies that live within all of us, right? It's that duality that lives within all of us, okay? And sometimes we'll be more on our feminine or more on our masculine. That can change on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis, or we can be someone who's solidly in their masculine or solidly in their feminine, okay? So the High Priestess also talks about that. She talks about feminine energy, that feminine energy of holding back, going within, going inwards, right? Not necessarily that action-orientated masculine energy that we see a lot in our current society, okay? So the High Priestess is kind of the antithesis to that. She's also the High Priestess, right? So as I mentioned before, in regards to all of the biblical, mythological imagery that's taken place in here, right? She's also holding the Torah. So she's holding the Torah. I don't know if you can see that there. So she's holding the Torah, the Jewish religious scripture, which is also the Old Testament of the Christian religious scripture. She's also wearing a cross, right, symbolizing Christianity. And we can see all of these pomegranates around her, which is where we know that she's also holding the energy of Persephone. Okay, so the High Priestess is a deeply, deeply spiritual, mystical figure. And so when she turns up in a reading, it's often because we are being asked to be that way, or someone in our lives is emulating that for us, okay? There's a real underworld, otherworldly gateway theme with this card, right? So she's sitting in a doorway to Hades, shall we say? And so she is about that transient nature as well. She is about going to other worlds. She is about that veil being thin, right? Very mysterious, very charismatic, very loving and nurturing, right? And often very attractive to people because of that deep quality that she holds. If you know a High Priestess in real life, right, she's going to be a little bit of an enigma. She's going to be very attractive. She may keep herself to herself. She may be a little bit introverted, but she's going to kind of shine at the same time. Again, duality. Very much what the High Priestess is about, this and that, both things being true. So also I may look in future videos about the astrological signs that correspond to each major arcana card. So for now, I'll just mention that the High Priestess corresponds to Pisces. So if you think about all of the attributes that Pisces has, then this can also be found in the High Priestess. Right, I feel like I've been jabbering on about the High Priestess. She's a card that's a little bit hard to necessarily describe because when I try and get into that energy, it's a very watery energy, okay? It's a very watery, kind of very slippery, kind of mysterious energy. And that, you know, is the High Priestess at its core. So next week, we're going to look at another divine feminine energy. We're going to be looking at the Empress. So for now, go within, right? We've looked at this week. Maybe you want to experiment with tapping into the energy of the High Priestess as the week goes on, tapping into being able to go back into your intuition, tapping into your own cyclical nature of wanting to be out there and wanting to be more quiet sometimes, right? Okay. I hope you've enjoyed that one, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care. Bye.